every time I've done anything, fear has always been with me. She will sometimes scream and yell, and I always say, I'm in the driver's seat. You sit back there in the back seat. You can say what you have to say, but I'm driving, and I appreciate your concerns, but I'm gonna just keep driving in what I need to do.
Hi everyone, this is Katana Abbott, and I want to welcome you to Smart Women Talk. Many high achievers follow that well-worn path to success. You know it, earning the right degree, landing prestigious jobs, and climbing the corporate ladder only to find themselves feeling unfulfilled, even wiped out. If you're feeling stuck and not sure what to do next, then relax. Take a deep breath because you are in the right place. Today, we're talking with Arivee Vargas, award-winning executive coach and author of Your Time to Rise, Unlearn Limiting Beliefs, Unlock Your Power, and Unleash Your True Self. Welcome, Arivee, to Smart Women Talk. It's so exciting to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
So you have this interesting career that you were doing in big law.
Yes.
And something happened, and you ended up transitioning, and now you are the successful career coach. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yes. So my story, I start my book with, chapter 1 really does start with the story of when I had my first child. I have 3 kids, and I had my first child 10 years ago. And that's really where I had what many would call, and what I really call, an identity crisis, where for your entire life, you're working towards something. You go to school, they tell you what to do to get good grades. They tell you, you go to college and then you get good grades, and then you go to a good law school and then you get good grades, and then you go to a good law firm, and then you do whatever they tell you to do to be quote unquote successful and to perform at a very high level. And you start to over-identify with what you're doing and how you're performing and the accolades and accomplishments you acquire. Not because something is wrong with you, but that's because that's how you've been programmed your entire life, to do what you're told, to follow the rules, to do the right thing. And so you start to over-identify with that title and that profession and what you get from it, especially, I would say, especially the paycheck. Like, you start to really over-identify with that. And so that was the beginning of my personal growth journey. Really started when I had my son, because when I had my son, I had the privilege of having maternity leave from my firm. Not everyone has that privilege of paid maternity leave. I had that privilege, but within that, when you have an infant, you are not working. You are taking care of an infant, and all you're doing is making sure they live. You're like, they have to eat, they have to go to the bathroom, all the things as an infant that you have to take care of, and you no longer have validation from your work anymore. And there's no meaning you can derive from your work because it's not there. So you have to find meaning in other places. Katana, it's not like I wasn't volunteering and doing other things. Of course, I had meaning in other places in my life, but because I was doing so much of my work, what you do often becomes who you are and how you identify. And so I was over-identifying. And when you do that, and then that's taken from you, or you're transitioning to something else, that's like a huge grieving process. And so I was grieving, not being so attached to my work, and definitely equated my personal worth and my personal value with my work. And I talk about this in the book. There's a whole chapter on self-worth as an inside job. And so that was the beginning. And I think that's important to start there, because that's the beginning of when I really started to really dig into myself and what really lights me up. Who am I without my title? Who am I without my degrees? Who is Arivee? And that's not to say I never had a little voice whispering on my shoulder saying, hey, are you sure you really want to do this litigation thing? It was always there. It was always there because I knew I was good and I was great at what I did. But I always knew, I know there's going to be something more out there for me. Like, I always knew that. But Katana, when you're in the grind and you're making money, and I didn't grow up with much money. I came from a very humble background. When you start seeing that money and you start seeing your title and you start seeing you're getting promoted or you're doing really well, performing at a high level, it can be addictive. Like you just are on that treadmill, and it doesn't matter if you're tired, you just keep going. And that's why when I had my son, it was like someone hit stop on my treadmill, which never usually happens, right? But someone hit stop on the treadmill and said, okay, now it's time to look in the mirror and really figure out who you want to be and what you want to do. And so that eventually led me to leaving the law firm and going to be a lawyer at a company, which then quickly led into not practicing law anymore and doing corporate compliance, then going into HR to do employee relations and leading leadership development for the company globally, which was an incredible experience. But along the way, Katana, what I didn't mention is because my personal development journey truly started to take root when I had my son, I got coaching. Like I got coaching right around that time. And I experienced the power of coaching. And then I became a coach. So I had been coaching for maybe 5-6 years before I left my full-time corporate job in HR to do this job I have now full-time.
So you did the coaching on the side.
Yes.
Side hustle, they call it,
yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I started the podcast, the Humble Rising podcast. I started my podcast 4 years ago. And I started that podcast right after I had my third child. And I actually recorded like 6 or 8 episodes before I had her, like physically had her. So people thought I launched it the same month she was born, but I did, but I had pre-recorded like 8 weeks of episodes or a lot of episodes that it wasn't that I was trying to do everything. I had prepared for that.
Yeah. And I just watched the one on the pause.
Yes. And pause. Yes.
And I took some notes. I love that. That is just so important. And it seems like that's exactly what happened. You had a pause from work.
Yes.
And you had to start asking those questions that you mentioned. One last thing I wanted to mention that I heard you say is that, yes, you left the big firm and ended up at a company using all your skills.
That's right.
Not a litigator anymore. You left that role, but you have all these skills, and look how many different positions you were able to do in a new company with that skill set. I'd love you to talk to people about that. I love that you did all those other roles.
Yes. So this is really important because oftentimes, and this is, who I coach as well, is sometimes because a lot of us are such high achievers, or we want to know everything, we want such certainty, we want to have everything figured out right now. We want to know the path, the entire path. And we want to know that it's going to all work out the exact way we plan it and see it. And that is, I would say, that's never the case. It's actually never exactly how you plan it or what you expect. However, you always end up in the right place for you. And so that's the first thing I'd say is when I went to that very fast-paced biotech company, I didn't go into that environment or that company saying to myself, okay, I'm going to go into litigation. I'm going to quickly move into corporate compliance and take on all these global programs I had never run before, right? I had never designed or implemented these kinds of programs, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to learn what it means to be a strategic business partner, which I didn't have to really do at a law firm. You serve a client, which is someone who's in a company. So you have to be okay and be confident in the fact that you have a core skill set and you can grow any other skill and you can strengthen your current skill set to then maneuver into another position. But it's always about, to me, what is the next right step for me? So after I went into that corporate compliance role and was in that role and did different kinds of roles, Katana, within that group, like I did different things and expanded my role within that group very quickly, always doing new things. So I always felt challenged and like I was growing. After about 4 years, I thought to myself, I think my work here is done. I need another next right step for me. And that meant completely leaving anything legal related, like legal and compliance, that's the group I was in, and then going into employee relations, which is much more HR focused. And that was my second big transition of, okay, I actually don't need to be known as a lawyer anymore. I want to be focused on leaders, emerging and senior leaders. I want to help them develop holistically. And again, though, the next right step, because the next right step was employee relations. And employee relations Katana, you're doing investigations. You are understanding the employee experience through that lens. So you get to talk to senior leaders, a manager, an employee, their peers, direct reports from a 360-degree view of what the experience is. And that informed then my work for my leadership development work. I got to understand what actually does make a great leader because I had all the qualitative evidence of what that would mean. But again, it was about this is the next right step for me. And then when I left that leadership development role to then really run my business full time, it was because I hit that point of, you know what? I think my work, like what I'm meant to do here, is also done. Like I know myself, I know my body, I know how to listen to myself from all those experiences. And I said, I can do this work and make more impact if I'm on my own. Because when you're at a company, you're relegated to that group, and fantastic group, but I wanted more impact. So it's really about simplifying it for yourself and saying, what is just the next right step for me? I have a skill set. I can learn anything. I can figure anything out. Obviously, I can't be a rocket scientist tomorrow, Katana. Okay, we have to be reasonable. But some people take themselves out of the running before they even try. And when they could completely do something that they have these transferable skills that they could use, but they're scared because they say, I don't know if I really can do that. And I always tell them, listen, most of the jobs that I did, I'll be honest, if there was a job description for it, I wouldn't have had that experience required. But you figure it out. And because you already have this adaptability, this resilience, this commitment to excellence, this commitment to teamwork, to collaboration, you figured out and you can do really well.
I love that. You've just said so much. There'll be wonderful things about, I love, you don't have to have the whole plan. That's perfect. And you, about 5 times you said the next right step. That's all you need to know is the next right step.
Yeah.
Having the support around you. So let's talk about this idea of support, because so many people, they're so afraid to take that first step, to even consider it. How does someone start? What's the process for dealing with the fear?
The number one thing I will say is you must deeply know yourself and be convicted in the reason why you want to do what you do. You have to be deeply convicted in that. Because Katana, I'm going to tell you, every transition I made from, I went to law firm, then I said, I don't want to be a partner. I want to do something else. And then I left the law completely, like really the law to do really HR work and to do leadership development work. And now what I do now, every big transition, I had questions. What do you mean? You're going to waste your law degree? So you have spent so many years building up your reputation as a lawyer. You could be a judge. You could go for those things. You could do anything, and you want to go be an entrepreneur, or you want to go and be in HR. And I'm like, HR is amazing. First of all, people sleep on HR, and that's a hard job. And every transition, had I not been convicted and super clear and anchored, and the reason why I wanted to take that next step, it would have been easy for me to feel judged, rejected, even for me to feel like I was making perhaps the wrong decision, but I didn't, because I knew it was the right step for me, because I believed in why I was doing it, because I had outgrown the thing I had been doing before. And I knew that. And the only way for me to feel alive in my work and for me to feel connected, really connected to it and do my best work was to transition. Again, these weren't massive transitions, Katana, right? They were shifts over time. So I wasn't dealing with a huge, massive leap. The big, massive leap was into entrepreneurship. But again, I don't think it was this big leap in terms of the work I've been doing. It was mindset, the big leap is the mindset. And fear, I will say, it's not that I didn't worry or have any fears, but I think this idea that we have to be fearless before we go and before we begin and before we start is a disservice, because every time I've done anything, fear has always been with me. She will sometimes scream and yell. And I always say, I'm in the driver's seat. You sit back there in the back seat. You can say what you have to say, but I'm driving and I appreciate your concerns, but I'm going to just keep driving and doing what I need to do. I do think there's something about that, because what people think is, oh, I become fearless and then I do it. And I say, no, what happens is your purpose overpowers the fear. It's just an overpowering. It's a little louder than the fear. It's not that fear is not there. It's that fear is just lessened a bit. I think it's unrealistic to say we have to just have no fear. We won't ever feel like we might be rejected. Of course, we're human. We may feel that way.
Absolutely. But I love that, acknowledging the fear and then saying, but I've got this. And another thing that I do, and I tell this to my kids all the time, is that fear and excitement are the same energy.
Yes, the physiology.
How do you know you're not just so excited and it's butterflies and you're thinking it's fear because you can't imagine that you're excited because you think the fear is what you're feeling. Maybe you're just excited.
Yes, yes. And I think if you're not feeling a bit of fear, it may be not worth it. If you're not feeling a bit fearful, it may not grow you. It may not be what you really want to do, because resistance, and I'm not sure, Katana, if you've ever read this book, The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, he talks about this, especially for creatives, but even for anyone who wants to do something and feels a lot of resistance internally and finds themselves self-sabotaging and procrastinating. He talks about this, that there is this, and I reread his stuff all the time. I'll pull a page when I'm feeling this way, because I go through that too. The inner resistance gets louder and it's heightened when you're doing something that is really important to you, something that really matters to you. Like you want to get healthy, so you want to work out 3 times a week. I'm just making this up. The resistance is going to get really loud when you need to actually put on the shoes, put on the clothes and go work out. Your brain is going to be like, you have so many things to do. You don't have time to work out. There's so many things that are going to be on your plate. You could have been doing 3 things in this 45 minutes that are on your plate. And now you're going to have more on your plate because you went to work out. Your brain is going to do that. And he talks about that. That resistance is there and it's really loud because this really matters to you. And your brain isn't used to that yet. They're like, we're not familiar with 3 times a week working out. Like, what is happening? What is this? But you have to just do it to train your body. Hey, this is what we do now. This is now what we do and how we do it.
Yeah. Remember the purpose-driven life years ago.
Yes. Oh,
right?
Yeah.
How does purpose fit into this whole thing with career? How does the purpose fit in with all those things that you ended up doing and that led you to where you are? And is that what your purpose is?
Yeah. Yes. For me, I had always known that I was meant to do something that had a big impact, either my community or the world. Like I always knew that about myself. I didn't know what that meant concretely or tangibly. But when I started practicing law, I started to see, okay, I'm building a skill set and I know I'm working to something. And at that point, beginning of my career, Katana, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a partner. I'll be a judge. I was thinking of all these things. But over time, because I still had that voice, and then when my son was born, I really was thinking, like, who do I want to become? Who do I really want to be? What legacy do I want to leave? When I die, what will I want to say my impact was? And for me, what ended up happening was when I got coached and then I started coaching, that became my thing. Meaning my purpose on this earth is to help anyone, but really I'm passionate about helping women, right? Really women see their value and their worth and live their truth completely. Because I read this a long time ago, Bronnie Ware's Top Regrets of the Dying, where she's a nurse taking care of the dying and she observes what they say they regret the most. And she records it. And the number one regret of the dying was, or is, according to her, that I wish I lived a life true to me, not a life expected of me. And the key part there was they actually said, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to me, not the one that was expected of me. Others were, I wish I didn't work so hard. I wish I maintained my friendships and relationships. But that number one thing of living a life true to you and having the courage, because courage, Katana, isn't something you just poof have. You have to generate it. You have to summon it. It's not something that just poof will happen for you. You have to go for it. And that is scary because especially when you're used to checking boxes and staying in a lane and doing what society thinks is the right thing, and you're not going to do that anymore. For me, that's what happened to me, right? Like I was a lawyer. People thought I would do all these things. People invested in me. Very prominent people in this community invested in me. And I said, oh, actually, I don't want to do that anymore. Thank you. And the truth is that when you decide to do that, like I'm going to go with what's true for me, the next right step that's true for me, not the right step according to what others would think it should be, you're challenging the status quo. And that doesn't always feel great, but you still feel internally aligned. And that feels really good. And that, again, that feeling overpowers the other feelings of what are they going to think and potential rejection. Even when I would tell my parents about what I was doing, they were always terrified. But I always told them, this is the key, Katana, I always told them after I was clear in my decision. Because if I allowed voices, like opinions, as I was thinking through, it wasn't going to be helpful because I know me and I had done the work.
Yeah. And that's why so many people say when you have an idea, especially entrepreneurs, and I'm sure in corporate too, same thing, you keep that inside you and don't share it until you're ready.
Until you're ready.
Because someone will take it from you and they could steal it, of course, but it's more like burst your bubble.
Yes. Yes. And they're in corporate, it's like you still have to have the idea like ready to be shared, right? Yeah. Like you have to be ready for others to have views about your idea. Like you have to be ready to engage. And personally, when you feel like
you have other people join you and you're like, yeah. My baby.
Yeah, no, yes. But
my idea.
Yeah. But even in entrepreneurship, or even when you have an idea, or maybe you want to be an entrepreneur, or you want to shift in your career in some way, it is very difficult. And this is so important for people to know. It is very difficult for others who haven't had your kind of awakening. It's difficult for them to understand why you would do that because they're not there. So why would you ask them a question when they are not there and they're not ahead of you? So how can they offer anything of value to you if they haven't been there and they're not where you are? Like they're not where you are spiritually, mentally. They're still into the box checking. They're still into, I do what I'm supposed to do. I do what I'm expected to do. And that's what I do. They're not willing to think out of the box or shatter the box, but you are. So why would you ask someone who doesn't want to shatter the box, like an opinion about what you're going to do, which is going to be that. So I always say, be mindful of who you seek advice from. You have to be mindful of who you seek support from. And the people who truly support you for you and know you and want the best for you will never, ever poo your ideas. They won't. They'll say, you know what? I don't understand that, but I totally support you. Whatever you need from me, you got it.
Because we both work with women.
Yes.
It just seems like women have bigger challenges with these limiting beliefs, and they came from things that happened to us that we were told, that we witnessed. I'm wondering, what is your advice to people on dealing with these limiting beliefs? And are there special challenges that women face, and especially women of color?
Yes. Oh, Katana, we could talk about this for hours. I will share maybe the ones I've seen, I would say the top challenges that are rooted in these limiting beliefs. One is that, and I think these are related. Sacrifice is the norm. And when I say sacrifice, I mean you're sacrificing repeatedly, and that is normal. To always have to sacrifice yourself, your well-being, to perform and to be seen as great at what you do. There's this constant need to prove yourself. I cannot tell you how many leaders and lawyers I work with that feel like I'm only as good as my last project. I'm only as good as my last email. I'm only as good as my last accolade. Because it could all come crashing down. So they work that way. They work to prove every time. And when you do that, you feel like you need to become 24/7 accessible, responsive, and you work yourself to burnout. Like most of the women I work with, they're right on the verge of burnout. They're not there yet.
Boundaries.
But yeah, and that's very difficult for them to set boundaries because they also haven't, I would say, and again, it's not their fault, is that they haven't been able to yet truly anchor down in what their non-negotiables are, truly. And when I say non-negotiables, I don't mean, okay, my priority is to spend time with my family every day. That's not what I mean. Your non-negotiable is I shut off my email or I don't check it from 5 to 7 p.m. 3 days a week because I want to be with my family. It's very specific. So it's not overwhelming. You feel like you can do that. 2 hours, I can do that. If there's an emergency, obviously you flex. But if you feel like you're always in emergency mode, then that's not a boundary. You're just doing what you've been doing before, right? So that number one thing of self-sacrifice is how I operate. It's how I prove myself. It's how I perform. It's what's required. That is, I think, the number one limiting belief and challenge that I see. That
With women.
Yes, with women. And because I don't see that as much with men. And that is related. I love this challenge because it's so layered in that within that challenge, it's the belief that rest is unproductive, meaning I have so much to do. If I'm resting or doing anything else, I'm not doing what's on my plate. And I need to clear my plate before I rest, before I have fun, before I do those things. And I always say, you will always have a to-do list. Always. Your job is to master prioritizing that and prioritizing self, carving out time for you, carving out time to refuel, because you cannot be excellent as you want to be in your job or at home or as a mom, whatever you're doing. You cannot be as excellent as you want to be if you haven't poured into yourself first. It sounds so cliche, but because people in Katana, there's like all those memes about that. Oh, rest is unproductive. Rest is productive. Rest is productive. And the truth is that I believe that women understand that intellectually. They're like, yes, of course, rest is productive. I should rest. Yes. They understand that up here. They don't really believe that though, which is why they don't take the time to rest, which is why they don't get enough sleep. And Katana, we know the research on sleep. You need at least 8 hours of sleep, 7 to 8 hours. And some people say 9. The research is super clear that when you are stressed, your body will show that in different ways. You become reactive with your kids or people at work. Your body exhibits symptoms of stress, like skin rashes, things that we think, oh, let's go to the dermatologist. And I'm like, yeah, but the underlying issue is your inherent level of stress because it lives in the body. So we don't tend to see ourselves from a 360-degree view. And part of when I work with them with these challenges, it's understanding them in the context of everything that they do, meaning all of their roles they play as a parent, as a leader at work. If you're not a leader, as an individual contributor, whatever it is, that you really have to look at, how am I living? How am I working? And how can I do it differently to feel a bit better? Just again, one step at a time. So I think it sacrifices the norm is the big one, which is related to this belief that rest is unproductive, right? Intellectually, we think rest is productive, but we don't really believe that. So we don't do that. And I think the other one is specifically for women of color. That's important to mention. Women of color, and I would say first generation, the children of immigrant parents, there are a few. I think the biggest one is the humility and the modesty. Meaning, when I say, Katana, my podcast is called the Humble Rising Podcast. When I say humility in that podcast title, I don't mean it the way that I was raised with it. I mean it in the way of, we all have to learn and grow and be open to knowing that we don't know everything. And that's a good thing. You have a lot of knowledge, you've experienced a lot of things, you have a lot of wisdom, and there's so much to learn and to grow from. And that's a great thing. That's how I interpret humility as an adult. As a child, especially for women of color, and I think first generation, women that are first generation, humility and modesty was about being quiet. It was about not being visible. It was, keep your head down, your work will speak for itself. You just work hard and it's a meritocracy. You'll get what you deserve, right? It was, don't be a bother. Don't be a fuss. Don't be too much. Don't be too loud. Mm-hmm. So we get shocked when we go to work and we feel like we don't have a voice and we have quote unquote imposter syndrome, which I despise the phrase. And that could be another episode, but we go into these environments that anyone would feel like, this is really hard. Am I doing the right thing? Anyone would feel that way in these kinds of environments. But we go in there thinking we're suddenly going to find a voice we were never trained to find and own as a child. Mm. How can you expect someone to all of a sudden as an adult have my voice? I know my value. I know what I can contribute. And here I am when they were never raised to do that at home. That takes a lot of retraining and unlearning. Like unlearning that was okay. It wasn't okay. But but I always say our parents did what they knew, and you can't go back and change that, but you do have a responsibility to change it for yourself now. So I think that is the biggest one I've seen for women of color and first generation women.
So you mentioned something about values. And as a financial advisor, I would talk to people about, what is your goal? Want to send my kids to college.
Yeah.
Okay. Then if I know their value is about having the best of everything,
Yes.
they have a choice of putting that money in that fund or getting that bauble over here. So how does this tie into what you're talking about also? Because you do talk about values, and how is that related in your work?
Yes. So I talk about this a lot in the book as well. And I work with my clients. My clients, they know one of the number one exercises we're going to do is core values. You have to know your core values. And these are the principles that guide what you do and how you live and how you interact with people. That's what core values are. They literally guide everything that you do. And so in addition to the book laying out limiting beliefs and the weight of expectations and, how self-worth really is an inside job, the book lays out a framework for really getting unstuck. If you're feeling lost or confused, you're at an inflection point of, what am I doing this for? What is this all for? What's my next step? The book really has a framework for that. And the framework is assess, activate, ask, align. And assess as taking a stock of where you are. That's what that means. Assess as taking stock with where you are in every area of your life and what you really want to do differently. And where do you want to focus? Because you can't focus everywhere. Right. And then the second step is activate, which is where the values come in. So activate is activate your core values, activate your purpose, activate your innate character strengths. No one in the world has your combination of core values, strengths, and purpose. No one, only you. But core values fits into that because you must be anchored in the things that are most important to you. So for me, my number one core value is freedom. And it is wealth, but it's time freedom. It's health freedom. Like the way I think of freedom is that expansive, right? One of my core values, my top 3, is service. So I love to give and serve others to uplift them. That is what I live for. It's what makes me feel alive. It energizes me, right? So everything I do, those are 2 of my core values. Like I'm going to be always focused there. And my decisions are going to be aligned with those core values. So they feel good to me. Because oftentimes what's happening is we're not internally aligned, meaning we say we care about something. For example, I prioritize my family. Family's number one for me. But then when they look at their life and how they're living and how they're working, they see that, I can't see it's a priority for me. I feel it is, but I don't see it. And the same thing with well-being. I can't tell you how many clients, when we do the assessment together, they look at the different areas of their life and they look at what their core values are and their priorities, what they say are their priorities. And well-being comes up as something that they really want to focus on, but yet it is the thing they spend the least time on, right? And so you can see where you may need to make some different decisions, but it's because you're anchored in something that is true to you. Right? Because for me, your core values, your purpose, your inherent strengths, the vision you have for yourself, which is that third part, ask what your vision is, that is all unique to you. And everything you do has to be with that intention in mind. Like you are actually aligned in what you want to do and how you live. So you're not feeling this dissonance. You're not feeling this resistance, or what I always say, it's like a tug of war. You're feeling that internal tug of war, and your job is to get your alignment tight. That's the job.
This has been one of the most powerful interviews I've ever done.
Oh, really?
Yes, I absolutely love this. And our theme this month is all about unleashing your power.
I love that.
Yes, and that's exactly what you're sharing here. We're at the end of our time. And is there anything that we have missed? Now, we didn't get the fourth one. Ask, assess, activate, ask,
align. It's not a linear framework, but align is what you're constantly trying to do. As I mentioned before, you're trying to align what you say you want, what you say you need, what your truth is. You're trying to align that with how you're actually living and working and how you're making decisions. And when you make decisions in alignment with who you truly are and what you really want and what you need, and I would say this, in this season of your life, that's really important too. It's not just about what do I want? It's, in this season, for example, as a new mother, I'm not a new mom, but for those who are, in this season, this is what I need. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to live my life in this season. And I'm okay that it's not how it used to be 2 years ago. And I am okay that it may shift in 2 years, but I'm going to reassess then. So that it's a fluidity there that we have to get comfortable with, but it's always about aligning that inner alignment.
I love that. Yes. And that gives people permission.
Yes.
Not to be judged, because a lot of times the worst judge is ourselves.
Absolutely. Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, so tell us how people can connect with you, and again, about getting your book. Do you have a special place on your website? Because
Yes.
we can all go to Amazon, but sometimes it's nice to get it from the website.
Yes, you can find the book on my website, ariveevargas.com/book, or you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And my website, ariveevargas.com, you can get access to free resources, learn more about coaching. You can also access the podcast via my website. So the Humble Rising podcast is available on all major platforms, but is also available on my website. And you can always reach out to me on Instagram at Arivee Vargas or LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Boy, you've got some energy.
You do too, Katana, but you do too.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Everyone, visit joinsmartwomen.com so you can know who our guests are and you can become part of our free community. And until our next show, go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity.